Welcome back to the Boogie Mansion, and as you all know, Monster High as a doll line has been through many generations, but by far the most beloved was Generation 1. You all know the story. Came out in 2010, ended in 2016, disappeared from 2018 to 2020, but it came back in 2022 when we got reproductions of G1's first wave. This continued with lines like Haunt Couture, Real Drama, and other miscellaneous dolls. While there was no media to coincide with these, fans were still glad to have somewhat of a return to G1. But wait, there was media. In October 2023, Monster High revealed that they partnered up with IDW to release a new comic series set in G1's canon. Alongside this, a new book was announced. Titled Once Bitten Twice Dead, the novel was going to center Draculaura in a plot about her dealing with the death of her father, Dracula, the school going crazy, and her falling in love with a human guy? Well, that's a bit weird, but surely the book was still going to be awesome, right? Upon its release, Once Bitten Twice Dead received a very negative reception. Fans criticized the novel for being derivative of past material, inappropriate elements and scenes involving the teenage cast, and some questionable plot choices. This led to many fans not even giving the book a shot. But today, I, the Boogie Mansion, will take on the Herculean task of reading this novel myself to determine if Once Bitten Twice Dead really deserved the hate. Without further ado, let's get into the review.
Make sure to like and subscribe.
For the purpose of context, let me do a quick summary of the plot, relatively quick anyway. One summer, Dracula visits his house at Monster High with Draculaura. While there, he reveals that he is dying due to an improperly treated sunburn. Usually some medicine would have him covered, but his practitioner gave him an ointment that contains silver, lethal to vampires and werewolves as well. Draculaura passes out from the shock and awakens to a pile of dust that was once Dracula. After that, she kind of keeps to herself because, the whole her dad dying thing. And the next semester, Drac finds out she's missed a lot of stuff that happened with her friends. Like Laguna and Gil breaking up. I know people are happy about that one. And Claudine and Toralei getting together. Also, Claude and Draculaura broke up off screen. Or off page, rather.
Love at first bite.
Things get worse when Cleo's dad, Ramses Denial, aims to take Dracula's former spot as Monster High's head of school board. Cleo is glad about her dad being at school, but is saddened by him not caring about her once again. All of this overwhelms Draculaura to the point where she runs away to the human world. While there, she meets Poe. He's a human guy who is at the graveyard in remembrance of his mom. The two bond over their shared grief, and Draculaura takes a good look at Poe's bodily features. Draculaura lies about being human to Poe, taking on the name Laura, and the two hope to meet again. Draculaura returns to Monster High to see a group of humans filming monsters, before running off. Because of this, Ramses announces that all extracurriculars will be cancelled due to the incident. Cleo and Deuce get into an argument over this that ends with Deuce breaking up with Cleo. Meanwhile, Draculaura begins to notice strange things happening to her, like not getting sick from garlic, the sun not burning her, and a shadow following her around. When she returns to Monster High, all the lockers slam shut. Draculaura checks her locker to find a strange book that reveals some shocking info. Monsters who are turned into vampires will regress to their original species upon the death of the person who turned them.
Draculaura's turning back into a human!
More weird stuff continues to happen at the school. Students' powers going haywire, Bunsen burners going off, and a pack of Scargoyles attacking the students. When Draculaura walks down the hallway, she sees Twyla and Wait.
Twyla?
But yeah, Twyla and Skeleta are applying burn cream on their wounds, which not really sure how that works for Skeleta, but I digress. Due to the incident, many students are sent home, and Gory Fang Tell is even transferring back to Belfry Prep. Also, apparently Toralei saw Jackson pee his pants. Sorry Jackson and Holt fans, you're never gonna win ever. Drac tells Ghoulia about what's been happening to her, and Ghoulia assures her that she'll get a cure for her humanness in no time. During that, however, a blood etching appears on the wall, written in Latin. Sanguise requieto. That was my best attempt at pronouncing that. But yeah, that translates to blood is required. Ooh, wow. Poe arrives at the cemetery, and he and Drac talk for a bit. And eventually the topic shifts to the monster video. and Poe talks about how everyone in the community is wary of monsters, and how the Van Helscream Society is planning something. So yeah, the two end up kissing. It's very descriptive, almost a whole page worth of details really. But this passionate moment is interrupted by Poe's mouth bleeding. He calls out in terror that Draculaura has fangs, and from the shock and the blood, Drac passes out. She wakes up to Poe by her side and comes clean about the whole vampire thing, her turning human, all the works, and Poe is largely accepting, if a bit confused. His dad tries calling him, but he doesn't pick up, citing how he's been hard on him lately. Drac sends him an eye coffin so they can contact each other. That night, Frankie is trying to set up a girls' night, but Drac is still anticipating Poe's message. On her TV, she sees Ramses going on about his campaign, and surprisingly, Medusa appears, talking about how she wants to keep her baby Deuce safe from normies. Eventually, Drac gets Poe's message and they start to FaceTime. They each talk about their lives, and Poe presents the possibility that when Draculaura fully turns human, he could show her around the normie world. Drac is like, "OMG, yes!" So they agree to date. Before the girls' night, Drac leaves for a date with Poe, and the two hike up a trail. They enjoy a picnic with a great view of the summit. Spending this time with Poe has made Drac consider that maybe turning human wouldn't be so bad after all. Later on, Poe drops Draculaura off at Frankie's home, and she heads to the ghouls' night. Around the fire is Abby, Claudine, Frankie, Laguna, and Toralei. They're also joined by Deuce, who's in a hammock sulking over Cleo. Toralei takes him home, and Draculaura sits down to eat some snacks. Draculaura visits Poe's house, they make out, yada yada. Oh wait, Ghoulia's found the answer to Drac's human problem. At the coffin bean, Ghoulia tells Drac that in order to regain her vampirism, she'll need to drink the blood of a human, and if she waits too long to do this, she might not be able to survive the retransformation process. Draculaura is taken aback by this and wants to hold out on telling the other ghouls about the human stuff. The next day, Draculaura finds Laguna walking around with pink scales. That's right, y'all, the moment you've all been waiting for. Laguna got boiled alive. Well, not really. With all this nonsense happening, Drac decides it's finally time to come clean about turning human. Claudine and Laguna are mad at her and take off, but Frankie gives her a big hug and is glad she knows the truth now. This conversation is interrupted by normies, who've broken onto campus. Everyone is sent into chaos, but they eventually run off and Bloodgood has everyone take attendance. Everyone's name is called except one, Frankie. She's been kidnapped by the normies. A video begins to play on all the school screens of Frankie tied up. A man walks in frame and reveals that he is Van Helscream. That's right, the Van Helscream from Fright On. Strangely, no one seems to recognize him, even though that movie should have happened based on Gory being there, but I digress. He states that he's going to terminate Frankie and all the other monsters before the stream cuts off. The ghouls hatch a plan to rescue Frankie, but this is complicated by the normies attacking once more. Their charge causes the glass above them to break. Blood drips from Draculaura's wrist and is absorbed into the floor. Suddenly, an invisible barrier appears that blocks the normies off from the school. Finally realizing they're in over their heads, Nephra and Ramses escape with all of their treasure. In the library, Ghoulia reveals to Draculaura that the "blood is required" message means that her blood is required. The protections on the school are powered by the blood of Dracula's kin, and in order for them to be completely brought back, Draculaura has to become a vampire again. So she heads off to meet Poe. She tells Poe that she needs to suck his blood, and he agrees. With one final kiss, Draculaura begins to drink Poe's blood. The transformation seems like it failed, but Draculaura turns into a bat and flies over to the school. When she arrives, she uses a blade to give her blood to the school, which fully activates the protections. After that's settled, the ghouls head out to save Frankie. They arrive at the Van Helscream facility, and Claudine tracks down Frankie by scent. Apparently she smells like formaldehyde. They use all their powers to free Frankie but end up getting caught, except for Cleo. She threatens the normies with a relic of ancient power, Snake Stone, which is what Cleo calls Deuce's... Yeah. The normies buy her bluff and the ghouls escape. Back at the school, everyone is recuperating and rebuilding. All the parents have arrived, including Medusa, who demands Deuce leaves the school. But Cleo steps in to defend him, leaving Medusa stunned. Deuce is absolutely amazed by Cleo, and they kiss, and they're back together. Skipping forward in time, Draculaura is now the head of the school board, and she's got a lot of responsibilities to deal with. But even though things are changing, Draculaura knows that her friends will always be by her side. So that's the whole book. Aren't you glad I summarized it for you? You know, instead of actually having to read it. So, I'm not really sure where to start with this section. I guess I'll address the controversy around Once Bitten Twice Dead. As mentioned at the start of the video, this book caught a lot of flack from the fandom for its more questionable elements. Stuff like Laguna boiling alive, Deuce's obelisk, Draculaura feeding her blood to the school, and getting with a random human guy. And all of that stuff caused the fandom to view the book as this awful train wreck. But after reading Once Bitten Twice Dead myself, I can safely say that the book wasn't that bad. But you wanna know something crazy? I honestly wish it was as terrible as people said. You see, Once Bitten Twice Dead's biggest crime wasn't any of the blood rituals or the obelisks or students being burnt alive. No, it was the fact that it was boring. The book started off on a pretty good note with the shocking death of Dracula. Seeing her deal with the aftermath of that loss and the emotions that came with it was honestly gripping. Combine that with Ramsey's scheme, which, while it's a bit derivative of Boo York, I was intrigued to see where the plot could be going. But then it all fell apart upon the introduction of one character, Poe. I do not like Poe at all. As a character, he's extremely bland. We don't get to know him all that well outside of his romance with Draculaura. Now, this isn't to say I hate romance stories. I've watched my fair share of romances I've loved, but those stories took time to show why those characters came around to falling in love with each other. Draculaura and Poe share their grief, yes, but besides that, the relationship is mainly just flirting and YA romance tropes. But okay, a little shallow romance is whatever. Monster High is no stranger to that, but with those instances, they're usually not the main focus of the narrative. In the 27 chapters of Once Bitten Twice Dead, there are 8 that center Draculaura and Poe's relationship, and those chapters drag like crazy. The plot pretty much takes a backseat whenever a chapter is centered on them. This sucks because the story has so many elements that are far more interesting, but because they're not romance related, they don't get as much focus. Because of that, it took me forever to actually read this book. I could have had this video out like months ago if I really locked in, but I just found it so boring that it took me until now to actually get this done. Quick disclaimer, this isn't to hate on the author Tiffany Schmidt. I don't want my dissatisfaction with the book to come across as an attack on her abilities as a writer, or saying that she should never pick up the pen again. In fact, all of this stuff is just my opinion, and I encourage you to read the book for yourself to form your own opinion. Moving on from the Draculaura and Poe stuff, what about all the other things in the book? Let's start out with Cleo, Deuce, and by extension Ramses. This book is already very derivative of past entries in the franchise like Fried On and Ghoul's Rule, but Boo York is no exception to this. It's been twice now that we've seen this story play out with Ramses pressuring Cleo into breaking up with Deuce, but they realize at the end that they care about each other and get back together. There's so many interesting avenues you could take with their relationship, but every Monster High story just has them break up and get back together again. Ramsey's plotline doesn't go anywhere either. He spends most of the book going for the school board position, but in the end he just runs away with Nephra, which I guess is supposed to serve as a contrast to Draculaura, who took charge and saved the school. But regardless, it felt like a whole lot of build-up for a mediocre payoff. Another part of the book I found weird were the off-screen status quo shifts, stuff like Laguna and Gil breaking up, which I can't necessarily complain about that one, Claude and Draculaura breaking up, and Claudine getting together with Toralei. I don't have a problem with any of these changes on paper, but for shifts this major, I would have actually liked to see them take place. Granted, I can't blame the author for this one as they aren't crucial to the narrative, so they don't need to be focused on. Plus, we're getting another Pride comic that'll explain how Claudine and Toralei got together. Moving on from that, let me be positive for a bit. I liked the main ghoul's inclusion in this book. They were all personified pretty well except for Laguna. But I really liked the portrayal of Frankie and Toralei. The author really captured the kind yet naive aspect of Frankie, and Toralei's sly attitude. Also, it always felt like late G1 content neglected Abby, so I was glad that she was prominent here. Another part of the book that I really liked was the insight into Dracula's relationship with her mother. Getting to see Camilla's diary entries detailing her life, fond memories with her daughter and Dracula, and her final thoughts before she died were really cool. So yeah, that's all I have to say about the book. Let's wrap it up. Well, it's time to give the final verdict on Once Bitten Twice Dead. Did it deserve the hate or not? To be honest, I think that the book is hated in the wrong way. Lots of over-exaggerations about the novel's content led people to believing it was offensively bad. But Once Bitten Twice Dead's biggest offense to me was just being boring. While the book had a lot of interesting ideas in the beginning, none of these concepts were able to reach their full potential due to the narrative black hole that was Dracula and Poe's relationship. I can't even say I hated this book. It made me feel nothing most of the time. I still encourage y'all to read it for yourselves to get your own opinion. Who knows, maybe you'll like it. If you made it this far into the video, I want to thank you greatly. I apologize for how negative this video was, but the good news is from now on, you can expect more positive videos, like theories, informational videos like my Monster High canon video, more Ever After High content, and possibly Equestria Girls in the near future. But for the next video, I'm finally working on the Monster High commercial ranking that I promised a while ago, so stay tuned for that. If you liked this video, or are excited for upcoming content on my channel, then like, subscribe, and turn on post notifications to catch the next upload. Thank you for watching and stay spooky.
BRB!